Hey, welcome back, everyone, and thanks for being here. Some wild news today. Any of you remember Seth Rich? He was the DNC worker who mysteriously died. They said it was a botched robbery, but Seth Rich was one of the suspected guys that, well, there's no serious evidence of it, but a lot of people suspect that he was the leaker with the Democrat files to WikiLeaks. That was the belief of a lot of people, even though we can't fully prove that. And of course, he died under what was said to be a botched robbery from robbers who stole nothing from him. And the story of his death has been pretty well suppressed. It's interesting now, the FBI actually has documents on his death. They've gotten documents from his laptop, and they want 66 years to release these publicly, even though the court has ordered them to release them. It's a very bizarre story that, if you think about the kind of controversy around Seth Rich's death and I guess you could call conspiracy theories around his death, it seems very strange behavior of the FBI. You know, if they have an opportunity to kind of clear the air on the issue, why would they take this opposite stance and make it look even more suspicious unless there's something to be suspicious of? We'll get into this today, folks. Also, more details are coming out on the attacker of Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, who, again, was struck in the head by a man with a hammer. The original story was a random guy broke into his house, hit him with a hammer. Then it turned out that a man broke into his house and they handed him a hammer, so they both had hammers, and then they both stripped down to their underwear, and then I guess they took a bathroom break during the home invasion, and then Paul Pelosi called the police, and the police showed up and found these two men in their underwear holding hammers, and then the other guy ran up to Paul Pelosi and hit him in the head then, meaning there was no assault prior. It's a very weird story. And then it turns out also the guy had some weird connections with some really bizarre far-left organizations, even though they're trying to claim he's like a conservative. And they're doing all these random things with it. Folks, it's a weird story. It's a weird story, but we're going to go into it today. It's a very good Halloween story, actually. So, yeah, it's fitting today. Happy Halloween, by the way. And also, folks, Hillary Clinton has a message to America, which is the right wing is planning to steal the elections. I'll get into Hillary Clinton's message later on today as well. That said, folks, thank you for being here. Again, after about 25-ish minutes, we will jump exclusively to Epic TV. So those of you on YouTube, those of you on Rumble, come join us on Epic TV. Breathe the fresh air of freedom. Maybe you'll get a bit more than on Twitter now that Elon Musk has gone in and cleared everything but the kitchen sink, as he suggested bringing a kitchen sink in. Let's get started, folks. So first story, let's talk about the FBI and why they claim they want 66 years to release the Seth Rich files. This is Law Enforcement Today, and it says, on July 10th, 2016, Seth Rich, a 27-year-old, a Democratic Party aide, was shot twice in the back in Washington, D.C., eventually succumbing to his wounds. In over 6 years since that murder, more questions than answers remain, and now the FBI, amid numerous questions about the integrity of the agency, has asked a judge to seal evidence from the probe for 66 years. Meaning, folks, when I'm over 100 years old, maybe we could talk about the Seth Rich files. In other words, further in this, it says, even more odd, the former greatest investigatory agency in the world, the FBI, they're saying that jokingly, had previously claimed the evidence they are seeking to hide or suppress doesn't even exist. And this is important too, because the FBI now wants 66 years to release this evidence after the judge ordered them to release it, after the FBI claimed the evidence didn't even exist in the first place and that it was found to exist. So why did the FBI first lie about the existence of the files, and then the court ordered them to release it, and then try to suppress the release of the files? It's very strange, very weird behavior that is not winning them any kind of brownie points in terms of credibility. Now it says, With they reported the FBI has failed to hand over evidence in the case despite a court order mandating the agency to do so, as we discussed. Further in, it says this past September, a U.S. District Court judge for the Eastern District of Texas ordered the FBI to, quote, produce the information it possesses related to Seth Rich's laptop. The order issued by Judge Amos gave the FBI 14 days, not 66 years, but 14 days to provide the evidence. The clearly rogue agency has refused to do so. That deadline expired on October 13th, with the FBI not providing the information, despite the court ordering them to do it. Maybe they'll get charged with contempt, just like Steve Bannon, just like Catherine Engelbright and Greg Phillips, who, actually, big update, folks. Today, Catherine Engelbright and Greg Phillips from True the Vote, they're going to jail without bond because they refused to reveal the identity of one of their sources on the Connick case. That, the Chinese company that was alleged, the company that had personal data of poll workers allegedly being held on Chinese servers. Odd story, because their lawyer did in fact reveal the name of their source, even though Greg Phillips and Catherine Engelbright refused to do so. It's kind of a separate story. Remember, these were the two folks who were some of the main sources for Dinesh D'Souza's documentary, right? They're going to jail today for contempt, folks. Steve Bannon is going to jail for contempt. Is the FBI going to go to jail for contempt, the heads of this agency, after they violated the judge's order by not providing the evidence on Seth Rich's death, or from his laptop? Well, here we are right now. Now, it says it wasn't until after the deadline that the Biden administration, for unknown reasons, asked for additional time to provide the information. It is also reported the FBI is withholding 3 reports produced by CrowdStrike in 2016 in reference to an alleged hack on servers belonging to the Democratic National Committee. And this is also important, folks, because this is what ties this whole thing together. Remember now, all right, Seth Rich is one thing. Seth Rich was the DNC staffer who may have had issues where he was unhappy with some things. He ends up getting shot in the back twice. He dies later, ironically, of wounds that he could have recovered from. There's some suspicions around the nature of his death, even after having been shot by individuals, I believe, who were never caught, who shot him in what they claim was a botched robbery, but did not actually rob him. How do you call it a robbery when they don't actually rob you? It was just a random killing is more accurate in this case. So Seth Rich dies. One of the big emails that came out that people pointed to that really kind of lended some of the belief that maybe this was a hit job was of, who was it? It was, the name slips my mind. The Democrats basically had an email where they were suggesting that if somebody, let's say if they had any evidence, not even evidence, if they believed that there was a leaker, right? It was John Podesta, I'm sorry. So John Podesta, who was one of the main aides of the Democrats, especially in the Clinton campaign, John Podesta, who has very, very strange art of nude children and murdered children and so on in his home, actually had an email where he was saying, not the exact words, and this was one of the leaked emails, that he was interested in punishing punishing a leaker, even if they didn't have definitive evidence that the person was, the source of the leak. This is referring to the leak to WikiLeaks of the Democrat emails. And when John Podesta, of course, wrote that email, it was later released, people suspected, well, was that related to Seth Rich's death? That was one of the big questions that people kind of pointed to with that. Now, the issue now, so we're talking about Seth Rich, we're talking about John Podesta suggesting they wanted to punish someone regardless of the evidence, and then you get to CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike was the company hired by the Democrats to frame the narrative that they had been hacked by Russia. Remember, the DNC servers were allegedly breached, emails were released to WikiLeaks. The problem with CrowdStrike was that the evidence they used to frame the whole Russia narrative was fake. The whole idea they used to frame the idea of Fuzzy Bear or Cuddly Bear, whatever it was, They use threat identifiers to claim an identifying profile of a Russian hacker group related initially to Ukraine. It turned out they falsified that data, and then they used that falsified data that they had manufactured to create this narrative that the Democrat servers had been breached by Russia. And then the FBI stepped in and affirmed this, but we later found out the FBI never actually investigated it. We found out the FBI solely relied on CrowdStrike, meaning the FBI never actually did real forensics on the computer, nor did the Democrats allow the FBI access to it. And so you're getting into this weird issue. Okay, so we have no evidence that Russia actually hacked the servers. In fact, the data analysis, which I wrote about back in 2016, the data analysis suggests it was an insider, not a breach, based even just on the size of the files and so on. There's no evidence they were ever hacked. The evidence suggests it was an insider. And interestingly now, the FBI and other agencies are also withholding the reports that would show this. Because the FBI would have had to have worked with, again, CrowdStrike, in order to affirm what they claim was the evidence that they used to claim that Russia hacked the election and hacked the Democrat servers and so on. Meaning, folks, this whole thing is looking very bad, and the FBI on both sides of this is trying to withhold information from the public. Now, further in this says, when Seth Rich was shot, D.C. Metro Police initially classified the incident as a robbery. However, it did not appear that any of Seth Rich's personal effects, including his phone, wallet, or other personal items, were taken during the incident, with all in his possession when police arrived. So they say it was a robbery. They didn't rob him. FBI is covering this whole thing up in very strange ways. We don't have answers yet. We can't say definitively, I should note, we cannot say definitively that this was an assassination. We cannot say definitively that he was the source of the Democrat emails to WikiLeaks. We don't know. But folks, this is kind of where we are right now. The FBI is blocking this information, and the FBI has the opportunity, if it is not the case, to say otherwise, solely by allowing this to be seen publicly. And it's pretty curious, I'd say, that they are not allowing that discussion. They're not allowing these files to come forward, because you would think it would be in their interest, if they are in fact innocent, it would be in their interest to clear their names and clear the Democrats' names and clear John Podesta's name, to end the conspiracy theories by allowing the evidence to come forward. So why are they not allowing the evidence to come forward? Go further into this. First off, folks, we do have a sponsor today. Today's episode is brought to you by Secure. Over 155 million Americans are affected by data leaks in 2020. The average American had their personal data stolen about 4 times over the year. People get anxious because they can't protect their online data and activity. But now there's a new email and messenger app called Secure, that's S-E-K-U-R, that can give privacy and security for sending emails and messages. Secure's server and data center are hosted in Switzerland, which has the strictest data privacy laws in the world. Secure does not rely on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which also means it's not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act. Secure does not ask for your phone number, mine your data, or upload your contacts. Now, folks, it's $5 for the messenger, $7 for the email, and only $10 for the email and messenger package. You can visit secure.com today for a free 7-day trial, or use the promo code Joshua to get 25% off. And big thanks out to Secure for sponsoring today's episode. If you're curious, by the way, I have Taiwanese oolong tea today. Now, folks, speaking of weird incidents, speaking of strange attacks and so on, there's more evidence coming out on the Paul Pelosi attacker. Now, if you've been watching the news, the narrative you've been told is that Paul Pelosi, the husband of Nancy Pelosi, who likes to drink and drive, was in his home, and a man broke into his home with a hammer, and this man then struck him on the head, tried killing him, allegedly. The police arrived, arrested the man, and they're claiming this is an example of far-right extremism. They're saying this is an example of the hateful rhetoric, of the danger of disinformation. This was a man misled, they claim, by election fraud conspiracy theories, and the conspiracy theories have led to violence, and they're a threat now to democracy and the basic safety of the people in charge of this country. But it turns out the whole thing is a big fat lie, because the guy is not a right-wing extremist. In fact, he looks like a very far-left extremist. He is a Green Party guy. He's part of a weird nudist commune. He's been under this really wild nudist Black Lives Matter activist. I'm not even joking. And the story of how this whole thing went down is also getting weirder and weirder and weirder, because this is what happened now as far as we know. The police show up, and Paul Podesta and the other guy are both in their underwear, and both are holding hammers. And then the guy runs up after the police get there and strikes him in the head, and then they arrest the guy, and the whole thing kind of ends in this weird, naked, half-naked man Mexican standoff with hammers. It's weird, folks. And it turns out too that, I guess during the home invasion, the guy just, who doesn't invade a home in their underwear, and then, you get your home invaded and you also strip down to your underwear, and then you ask the guy if you can borrow one of his hammers, and then you take a bathroom break and then call the police while you're taking a bathroom break. And then, the police show up, and then once the police show up, then you decide to maybe attack each other and so on, because that's actually what happened with Paul Podesta, according to the story we're being told. And it's making people wonder if that story's honestly true or not. Sorry, not Podesta. I'm thinking about Podesta. It's Pelosi, Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband. Sorry, not Podesta, not Podesta. Let me show you some of the stories in this, folks. This is what's coming out now. There's more evidence coming out. The leftist media, they're not getting off their horse. They're not getting off the narrative. This is right-wing extremism and so on. It's ridiculous they're even trying to claim that at this point. They should really apologize to the country for claiming this is right-wing extremism, because nothing suggests this guy was right-wing. In fact, again, he's Green Party, and it looks like he was seriously mentally ill. But let me show you this. This is post-millennial. It says Paul Pelosi's alleged attacker was hippie, background as nudist activist. Says the post-millennial editor-at-large Andy No actually discussed the home. He went to the house of this guy, right? He actually went to the home of this guy. And he said that Black Lives Matter and other left-wing signs and symbols line the outside of the hippie Berkeley, California commune where the Pelosi beating suspect lived. So the guy lived in a hippie commune. You have rainbow flags and Black Lives Matter symbols. And I looked at some of the bumper stickers. You have anti-capitalist bumper stickers suggesting the guy was a socialist or communist. The only party he's ever been affiliated with is, again, the Green Party. How are they claiming this is a right-wing attack? There's no evidence suggesting this is a right-wing attack, other than them just trying to use this politically right before the midterm elections. Further, it says, in recent years, De Pape, that's his name, his online presence grew erratic, according to Fox News, and he wrote blogs focused on censorship, Big Brother, and pedophile rings. De Pape's last political party affiliation was with the Green Party. And further, it says San Francisco Police Chief William Scott gave an update Friday and said that during the incident, our officers observed Mr. Pelosi and the suspect both holding a hammer. The suspect pulled the hammer away from Mr. Pelosi and violently assaulted him with it. Our officers immediately tackled the suspect, disarmed him, took him into custody. A little more on this. Another story here. That's a blog actually from Michael Sellenberger. It says Pelosi attack suspect was a psychotic homeless addict estranged from his pedophile lover and their children. It's strange they say that he'd been misled by, pedophile ring suspicions when his lover allegedly was a pedophile. And it says, leading politicians yesterday blamed the political right for the brutal attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul. This is despicable, said President Biden. He noted the alleged attacker, David Pape, 42, shouted the same line, "Where's Nancy?" as he supporters of Donald Trump, who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Suggesting again that this is a repeat, folks, of what happened on January 6, only targeting now an official in their own home rather than the Capitol building. And Biden also said, and what makes us think that one party can talk about stolen elections, COVID being a hoax? It's all a bunch of lies, according to Biden. Now, further it says, but De Pape's politics have little rhyme or reason. In past years, De Pape shared a post about Stephen Colbert's 2006 roast of President George W. Bush at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, linked to videos of Disney films altered to make it look like the characters were swearing, and claimed Jesus is the Antichrist. Not exactly right-wing tropes, as the blogger is saying here. And it continues saying, as I discovered yesterday, De Pape lived with a notorious local nudist in a Berkeley home, complete with Black Lives Matter sign in the window and an LGBT rainbow flag emblazoned with a marijuana symbol hanging from a tree. A closer look reveals the characteristics of a homeless encampment, or what Europeans call an open drug scene in the driveway. There is a broken down camper van, and on the street is a yellow school bus, which neighbors said De Pape occasionally stayed in. Both are filled with garbage typical of such structures in homeless encampments. People come and go from the house and the vehicles, neighbors say, in part to partake in the use of potent psychedelic drug named ibogaine, one I've never heard of. Neighbors described De Pape as a homeless addict with a politic that was, until recently, left-wing, not right-wing. The neighbors say he was left-wing, folks. So how are they claiming he was right-wing? It says, but of secondary importance to his psychotic, paranoid behavior. This is one quote from one of the neighbors. It says, what I know about the family is that they're very radical activists. That's one of his neighbors, a woman who only gave her first name Trish. She said, they seem very left. They are all about Black Lives Matter, gay pride, but they're very detached from reality. They have called the cops on several of the neighbors, including us, claiming we are plotting against them. It's really weird to see that they are willing to be so aggressive towards somebody else who is also a lefty. Very strange behavior, very strange incident, very strange evidence coming out. And the evidence coming out has already debunked the main narrative by a lot of the establishment media and, ironically, most of the Democrats, claiming this was an example of right-wing extremism. Folks, they should give America an apology unless they want to actually interfere with the elections by spreading disinformation, by claiming this was a right-wing conspiracy against Paul Pelosi. No evidence suggests that. The evidence says otherwise. Again, this is a left-wing extremist, a very erratic and crazed individual. No right-wing in terms of what he's doing and so on. No evidence that he was right-wing. And again, it's being used politically now. Now, that being said, interestingly, because Joe Biden just talked about how this is, again, dangerous, that anybody would claim the elections are being stolen. This is, again, false. This is a lie. They're also saying that this is dangerous rhetoric, that this individual believed that elections had been stolen. And if the individual believes elections had been stolen, maybe that could lead to violent acts, such as, again, the raiding of the Capitol building or attacks on the husband of the Speaker of the House. Serious stuff. Because, again, there are people they claim who are spreading information, what they claim is misinformation, that the elections had been stolen. But guess what? The Democrats are claiming the right wing is planning to steal the elections. They're doing the very thing they're accusing the other side of doing at the same time that they're accusing the other side of spreading dangerous rhetoric by doing so. Let me show you, folks. I'll get into this, but let me start with some top-level stuff on what's happening in terms of the elections and so on. First of all, folks, the Department of Justice is blocking requests for information on enforcement of a federal election scheme. Speaking of withholding vital information, right? Just like the FBI has been doing. And it says, actually, we'll jump over to Epic TV for this because election fraud stuff. YouTube does not like us very much talking about this. They again deleted our entire Crossroads Highlights channel. It's bizarre stuff. They still haven't told us why they did it. Let's jump over to Epic TV exclusively. I'll talk about, the interestingly blocking of information, blocking of the release of key information related to the elections, what the FBI is doing with this, what the DOJ is doing with this, and also how the Democrats are claiming that the right wing is planning to steal the elections, as Biden is claiming that doing so, even talking about election and fraud and so on, is a dangerous conspiracy. They are actually doing it themselves. Let me show you this, folks. We will jump over exclusively to Epic TV now. That said, let me show you a quick trailer. Folks, we had an interesting interview on one of our other shows. It's Yanya Kellick's show, American Thought Leaders, with Michael Pillsbury on how the U.S. government agencies are secretly aiding communist China's rise. Let me show you this and we'll jump over.
To put this out on global television is really a sign of Xi Jinping's power, that even a former president can be dismissed with like a wave of the hand.
Today I sit down with China expert Michael Pillsbury, Director for Chinese Strategy at the Hudson Institute and author of The 100-Year Marathon, China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower.
Some things have been redacted, removed from the book. The CIA and FBI and DOD felt were telling too much about just how deeply involved we were in China.
How exactly did the Chinese Communist regime use America to fuel its own rise?
They often refer to warring states. Only one country got to lead the world, and that country had to destroy the others.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick.
All right, folks, again, that's on Epic TV exclusively. Let's jump over now to Epic TV for the rest of the show. Again, on YouTube, Rumble, folks, come join us in Epic TV. I do an 1.5-hour show, including the live Q&A. Come join us, and I'll see you there. All right, folks. So let's talk about now how the Department of Justice is blocking